Good afternoon, good evening, good morning. This is Nelson Chamisa, the leader of the opposition, main opposition in Zimbabwe. And this is what Rugare Gumbo said about him recently in a video that has been circulating on the social media. Chamisa is doyen of Zimbabwe opposition politics. Brave, relentless attacks of Zanu PF, says ex-Zanu PF spokesperson Rugare Gumbo. I thought people are supposed to learn from experience. Here is an individual who has been at the heart of Zimbabwe politics for decades. Rugare Gumbo was in the liberation struggle. Before independence, and after independence, he has been a leading Zanu PF leader, and only fell out of favor after the 2017 military coup. And you think at 84, the old crow has learned something, but alas, he's learned nothing. Let's just listen to what he has had to say.
Yes.
You know, sometimes I tend to respect Kamanaka Chamisa in the sense that in the face of formidable challenges, the enemy manipulating. I don't know why it is.
Because he stood his ground. He stood his ground.
Yeah. Maro, I respect the young man because he's the only one I understand firm. The only one I understand firm to know.
First machinery.
Yeah. Where's what I be tell what mean
The run for cover.
wana monzora wana you know wana sikala
by the way.
I mean it's all rubbish. It's all rubbish in the face of this kind of thing. You can't. But the only thing which I think needs to be done, which is very difficult to do, is to develop my institutions, strong institutions, which can withstand pressure that doesn't. But you can't do it because you know the entire thing is manipulated.
Well, I think let's start with his role in Zanu PF. Here's an individual who has been in Zanu PF all his life, as he rightly admits himself. Zanu PF is a corrupt, tyrannical dictatorship. That is a fact. Question one is going to ask is, in all his decades in Zanu PF, what has he done to make Zanu PF a healthy and functioning democracy? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. He has played along to get his own share of the spoils of power. It's amazing that at least he got it right, that Zimbabwe needs democratic institutions. Zimbabwe cannot function because it has got no functional democratic institutions. The truth of the matter is, the opposition, people have risked their lives, livelihoods, to elect the opposition, whose primary purpose was to implement the democratic reforms and thus restore those democratic institutions. People, the opposition, the MDC as we know it, has been on the political stage since the late 1990s. The party itself was launched on the basis that they will implement democratic changes. Hence the name of the party itself, Movement for Democratic Change. What democratic change have they implemented? None. It is ironic that during the GNU, when MDC had the golden opportunity to implement those democratic reforms, they failed to implement even one. When Zanu PF cronies were asked during that time, why was MDC leaders not implementing reforms? They boasted that mazwana MDC adziza kudya Nyerere. They will not rock the boat. They've learned to enjoy the gravy train benefits, and they will not rock the boat. And Rugare Gumbo himself, as one of the cronies of Zanu PF, he was enjoying the benefits of the gravy train. And he, as one of the Zanu PF leaders, was not rocking the boat. Mugabe was cunning in the sense that soon after independence, he started bribing all those Zanu PF leaders around him with the trappings of high office. In an interview with Trevor Nuwe, Dr. Simbama Kone revealed that within a few months of getting into power in 1980, Mugabe cabinet ministers were surprised to be given keys to Mercedes-Benz to replace their Peugeot 406s that Ian Smith had issued to his ministers. Those limousines were never budgeted for. Cabinet itself never discussed them. This was a gift from Mugabe to his ministers. They all got the message. This is a bribe. Say nothing, do nothing, and hear nothing about Mugabe. And we will continue to enjoy the benefits of the gravy train. And lo and behold, Mugabe, in his 37 years in power, he enjoyed absolute power. None of his cabinet ministers ever challenged him, even on an issue that was so outrageous, like the Gukura Wundi. They all wanted to keep their Mercedes-Benz, their generous salaries and allowances. They didn't want to rock the boat. Mugabe did exactly the same thing when Morgan Tsvangirai and his MDC friends joined the party in, in the government of national unity. Chamisa was a minister during the GNU. And he, like the rest of the MDC leadership, were bribed. They failed to implement even one token reform. And so these Zanu PF cronies who talked of Mazwane MDC, of course they were right. It's shocking that it seems like Rugare Gumbo was the only Zanu PF crony who did not know of how Mugabe had bribed the MDC leaders. He had his offices as Zanu PF spokesperson in Zanu PF headquarters, Shek building, as people normally call it. And in all those years, he never heard of his colleagues boasting that Mazwane MDC at the Unbelievable. Even now, when he has left frontline politics and has had time to reflect on it, it has not occurred to him that MDC sold out during the GNU. It's unbelievable. One of the problems we have in Zimbabwe is that we never seem to learn from the past. Here is somebody 84 years old, and I'm sure people listen to him as here is a senior individual who has gone through all this and has learned, and therefore has got some wisdom to say. Alas, the old crow has absolutely learned nothing. It really is disappointing. We cannot change historic facts. During the GNU, MDC leaders, Nelson Chamisa was one of those leaders, failed to implement even one token reform. That is a fact, a historic fact that we under the carpet. Post-GNU, MDC leaders have participated in flawed elections out of greed. For somebody who claims to have their finger on the political pulse of Zimbabwe, it is unbelievable that somebody like Rugare Gumbo would not know things that are blatantly clear to everybody else. This is what David Coltart said in his book after the 2013 elections. He was admitting that those elections were flawed and illegal, and the only way out of it was not to participate, because if you participate, you only give Zanu PF legitimacy. But he is admitting that he and the rest of his friends participated out of greed, and they've been doing it ever since. And Nelson Chamisa, the very individual that Rugare Gumbo is telling us in this video that he is the champion of opposition politics in Zimbabwe. He, in 2018, was the one who was insisting in participating in those elections without reforms, claiming that MDC alliance had stringent measures to stop Zanu PF rigging the elections. Of course, he was lying. We all know that. Zanu PF went on to blatantly rig those elections. And it wasn't a mistake either. Because last year it did the same thing. 2023, Chamisa was the one who was saying Triple C was going to win big because I have plugged all the vote rigging loopholes. The upstart had not even secured a verified voters roll. Tim Pachedu had shown that the voters roll was in shambles. Zimbabwe's own electoral law says a verified voters roll should be issued at least one calendar month before nomination day. It wasn't issued. Nomination day came and there was still no verified voters roll. And Chamisa and company still were falling over each other to submit their nomination papers. Chamisa himself was claiming that he has plugged all the vote rigging loopholes. He didn't have a verified voters roll. Come voting day itself, he did not even deploy election agents at all the polling stations, although he had received the funding for it. Of course, he knew Zanu PF was rigging these elections. He knew that participating will only give Zanu PF legitimacy. And indeed, his friends in the Triple C, who had won those few gravity seats that Zanu PF was offering to entice the opposition to participate, they took up their seats even after SADC and the AU election observers had condemned the elections as flawed and illegitimate and illegal. They participated out of greed. That is the truth. Chamisa himself was leading from the front of that charge, participating in a flawed elections, conning people to participate for the sake of greed. It is therefore unbelievable that anyone, much less somebody like Rugare Gumbo, who claims or who should be one of the gurus of Zimbabwe politics, should be calling somebody like Chamisa a corrupt, breathtakingly incompetent, utterly useless opposition leader, a champion of Zimbabwe opposition politics. I think this is one of the tragedies of Africa. We learn nothing, absolutely nothing. We never seem to learn anything at all. Keep repeating the same mistake over and over again. If somebody who blatantly betrays the people, fails to implement even one democratic reform, even when they had the golden opportunity to do so, who cons the people to participate in a flawed election, to perpetuate the dictatorship, is a champion, then one has got to wonder, when are we going to learn and call a spade a spade? I think this has been one of the most disappointing statements that Rugare Gumbo has ever given. Some of us who have followed Zimbabwean politics, as much as we have been disappointed by some of these politicians, particularly these Zanu PF politicians, who have said nothing about Zanu PF while they were in power. At least when they lost power, they've spoken the truth. I referred earlier on there to Dr. Simba Makoni. He was also in Zanu PF. He played along while he was still enjoying the benefits of power. It's only when he fell out that he began to admit that Mugabe was bribing the Zanu PF leadership. At least he was admitting it. Was seeing the reality as it is. In the case of Rugare Gumbo, alas, the old crow is still as blind as ever. It really is disappointing. Zimbabwe is heading for 2028 elections. Nelson Chamisa is preparing to relaunch his political career. The head of Zimbabwean supporters who believed him last year when he told them that he had plugged all the vote-tricking loopholes and they should participate, are prepared to follow him again. He told them the same thing in 2018, and they learned nothing. And so when he repeated the same idiotic, nonsensical claim, they still believed him. And now we're going 2028. And the chances are he will con them again. The truth is, Zimbabwe is a failed state. Zimbabwe is in serious economic and political trouble. We need to get out of this mess. But as long as we have got an electorate that is so ignorant, gullible, and naive, that they keep on believing the same idiotic lies of winning in rigged elections, this country is doomed. There can be no doubt about it. Zimbabwe is in serious trouble. And one can see why. An electorate that doesn't learn, even this day and age, it's unbelievable. How is it possible that 44 years after independence, we still can't hold free, fair, and credible elections? How is it possible that 24 years after electing the opposition for the specific purpose of implementing the democratic reforms to stop Zanu PF rigging the elections, they have not implemented even one token reform? And somebody turns around and calls them champion. The country is doomed. As long as we are not prepared to learn from the past, we will repeat the same mistakes. And with each pass, pay dearly for it. 23 years without even one token reform implemented. 23 years And the opposition is now leading from the front in coercing, conning people into participating in flawed elections for the purposes of giving Zanu PF political legitimacy. And we still can't see it. Well, of course, I'm disappointed. But the truth of the matter is, unless the country learns, unless the people learn, Zanu PF is going to remain in power. It's going to continue rigging the elections and perpetuating the dictatorship, dragging the nation deeper and deeper into this economic and political abyss. And if we think somebody else is going to save us, or we've got something else coming, because nobody is going to do it. Whether we were ready for independence in 1980 or not, we attained our independence. After 44 years at least, we should have learned something. We should have learned that this political system is not working. After 24 years of electing, risking life and limb to elect the opposition to implement reforms, and they have not implemented even one token reform. We should have at least the common sense to say the opposition leaders that we have elected are not up to the task. Why that should be a quantum leap beggars belief. We still hang on to them, call them champions. Doyen of Zimbabwe opposition politics. What a sick joke. Well, the country will pay dearly for this. So before I close, I'll just play the video again for our friend, Rugare Gumbo.
Yes.
You know, sometimes I tend to respect Nangagwa Chamisa in the sense that in the face of formidable challenges, the enemy, manipulation, I don't know why it is. Because
he stood his ground. He stood his ground.
Yeah. Madu, I respect the young man because he's the only one I understand firm. The only one I understand firm to know.
First machinery.
Yeah. Where's what I be there? What mean?
The run for cover.
Wana Monzora, wana, you know, wana Sigala. I mean, it's all rubbish. It's all rubbish. In the face of this kind of thing, you can't. But the only thing which I think needs to be done, which is very difficult to do, is to develop my institutions, strong institutions, which can withstand pressure that happens. But you can't do it because you know the entire thing is manipulated.
Let me correct that. The GNU, the 2008 to 2013, was a golden opportunity for Zimbabwe to implement the democratic reforms which would have ended the de facto one-party state. The MDC leaders failed to implement even one token reform in 5 years because Mugabe bribed them. That is the truth. I'm disappointed that somebody like Rugare Gumbo failed to realize that. Even when those his fellow Zanu PF cronies were posting about it, that MDC leaders have learned to enjoy the gravy train seats, benefits, they'll never rock the boat. Well, if he didn't hear it, now he has heard it. What is his explanation for that? And to call those people who sold out on reforms champions, beggars belief. Really, no wonder the country is in a mess. Just show one comment here from Swanda. Well, Swanda is asking the question that I have been asked so many times. So what should we do? Well, we cannot keep on pretending that the present system is working. That is the first thing you should do. You should accept that the present system has failed. To keep on pretending that the opposition is doing a great job is unbelievable. It's just unbelievable. You're just repeating the same mistake over and over again. The opposition were elected to implement the democratic reforms to stop Zanu PF rigging the elections. They failed to implement even one. And to keep on pretending after 24 years that they will implement reforms, they'll stop Zanu PF rigging the elections, is unbelievable. So that is the first thing. In this particular case, since the opposition is hell-bent on participating in these flawed elections, the least we can do is not to be conned into participating too. No one with half a brain in Zimbabwe should have participated in these flawed elections. When you know they are flawed, Zanu PF will win them. When you know by participating you are giving Zanu PF legitimacy, and you still participate, how unbelievably stupid is that? Particularly last year, when SADC and the AU election observers had done Zimbabwe a great favor and said this election process is so flawed, doesn't even follow Zimbabwe's own electoral laws. That should have raised the alarm, got the alarm bells ringing. The elections have been condemned, and yet the opposition still went ahead and took up their gravy train seats and even defended the election. People like Tendai Biti, David Coltart are on record saying that where the opposition won, those are liberated zones. Of course, it's a lot of rubbish. ZEC failed to produce a verified voters roll, not only in the rural areas or those so-called Zanu PF strongholds, but all over the country. The election process was flawed. We cannot keep on, just because you are benefiting from it, they are able to, Zanu PF is allowing you to win a few seats, you still give the process credibility. I really would like you, Spanda, to look at the statement, the quotation I've been showing you there from David Coltart's book. He could not have made it any more clearer. This election process is flawed. The only logical step is not to participate. Because if you participate, you give vote rigging Zanu PF legitimacy. How anyone can still maintain that he must participate is just unbelievable. But for the opposition leaders themselves, of course, they would want to participate. As David Coltart is clearly explaining, they are participating because they also know Zanu PF is giving away a few gravity seats, and those they are finding irresistible. Why the ordinary citizen should participate beggars belief. So in short, what should we do? I think what people should do now is stop participating in these flawed elections. We will not get Zanu PF or the opposition as it is in parliament now to implement any meaningful reforms between now and 2028. But what we can do is make it abundantly clear that without reforms, we are not participating in these flawed elections. And I think if people of Zimbabwe had done the same thing last year, SADC, who also said those elections were flawed, would have been put under enormous pressure, at least, to deny Zanu PF legitimacy. But when you look at 2 million voting, nearly 2 million voting for Chamisa alone, it said to SADC leaders, well, the people of Zimbabwe are happy with the process. And who are we to interfere? And the opposition themselves, the people we voted for, said these are liberated zones. The elections in those areas were free, fair, and credible. This argument, we cannot keep on making the same foolish argument to justify our foolishness. People who claim that participating makes sense are just coming up with a foolish excuse to justify participating and perpetuating the dictatorship. If that's what you want to do, you can continue doing it. I repeat, Zimbabwe is in a serious economic situation, political and economic situation, and we, the ordinary Zimbabweans, have played our part in it by being so naive, ignorant, and gullible, to the point we even believe the same repeated idiotic lies like, I've plugged all the vote-taking loopholes, when we can see with our own eyes that he had not done so. When SADC and the AU election observers confirmed to us that these elections are flawed, and still we continue participating in flawed elections. Well, what can I say? What can I say? What can anybody say? Participating in 2028, when we know they are flawed, when we know participating will give Zanu PF legitimacy, is the most idiotic thing anyone can possibly do. And to call the person who is leading from the front, making these outrageous claims, a doyen of Zimbabwe opposition politics, beggars belief. Trouble with our politics is that we have got some of the most ignorant and idiotic leaders ever, buffoons. And we, the electorate, are the ones who have elected them and have kept them in office. How we have managed to get these Zanu PF buffoons to stay in power for 44 years speaks volumes of our own incompetence as the electorate. Of course, we had many opportunities to end the Zanu PF dictatorship, but we have wasted it. We can't even comprehend the reality that the opposition, MDC, CCC, failed to implement even one reform in 24 years and counting. And we still think they're the best foot forward. Well, really, if we are that naive and incompetent, we really deserve, whether we like it or not, nations do get the governments they deserve. And we in Zimbabwe deserve this corrupt, tyrannical, and murderous Zanu PF dictatorship, complete with its equally corrupt, incompetent, and utterly useless MDC CCC opposition. That is a fact, a historic fact. I know some people would like to deny it all they want, but that doesn't change history. History is not it's not written to please any one of us. History is a record of what happened, of the reality on the ground. That is the reality on the ground. And Zimbabwe is not getting out of this mess without acknowledging the realities, without doing something about it. If we keep repeating the same mistake, calling somebody who is blatantly sold out, failed to implement even one democratic reform in 24 years, has been conning people to participate in flawed elections out of greed, a champion, then we deserve to be a failed state. And we are a failed state. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. Have a good day.